Today we are with Hoffman, a fundamental Demoscene activist, both from an artistic point of view as a musician and as a coder of demos and tools that the whole community uses. Good afternoon, Hoffman. How are you?
I'm great, thanks.
Thank you. For those from another galaxy who don't know you yet, tell us a little about yourself.
Yeah, my name's my real name's Ian. I'm better known as Hoffman. I guess like most demo sceners or nerds, I cut my teeth with computers back in the days of the ZX Spectrum and the Commodore 64. And I was just a great lover of music from back in the day, particularly on the C64. Things like Parallax by Martin Galway changing my life at a tender age of about 7 or 8.
Absolutely.
And so I went through, got my Amiga eventually, discovered the demo scene, discovered some friends in my local area that also had Amigas, and then we kind of watched some demos and we're like, well, we'd like to have a crack at that ourselves. And then we kind of divvied up tasks, who would do what. So we had Clive who would do the code, Ian who would do the graphics, and then I said, well, I'll do the music then. Cool. So that's kind of, in the earliest beginnings, I guess.
Yes.
I think I was at the age of 14, 15, I think, when I started writing music with computers.
Okay.
I'm 47 now, so...
The magical 90s, yes.
Yes, yeah. And from there, I guess, I was in part of the demo scene for quite a while. Then I took a bit of a break to kind of become a semi-professional producer / DJ. So I kind of did a little bit of touring, did a bit, went up and down the country, went out the country a few times. But ultimately, unless you're really driven on that career path, you can't really do that full time. So So I was really into the new school breaks or breakbeat scene back in the early 2000s. That's where I was really DJing quite a lot. But then ultimately in 2010, a friend of mine invited me to his demo party in the UK, and I got hooked hooked right back in.
Entering into a new era, right?
Yeah, totally, yeah. Since 2010, I've been just immersed, I think is the best phrase to use. Yeah.
Cool.
So I've been doing a lot ever since then. So
fantastic. And so you've been creating productions non-stop for years. But tell us, at what point did you discover the demo scene? What was that eureka moment when you said, this is amazing, I want to be part of this?
That was, again, it was with my friends back when I was 14, 15. I think some of the first demos I ever saw was things like Pugs in Space. The Bud Brain Mega Demo. Wow. All that kind of stuff, back in those days. That's kind of where I got into it. All of us, my friends in the local area, we were just like, well, that looks really cool. I mean, these things, we loved watching them. We loved reading the scroll text. So that's how we kind of got into it.
It's mesmerizing.
Yeah.
Tell us about your musical influences. With which musical genre do you feel more identified?
That's a really hard one. Because I guess, you're talking about the early days of the demo scene, I identified with that kind of style, but I was really into just electronic music and dance music, like club music, rave music, that kind of thing. That was the stuff that really got me. That's what I was really hooked on. I mean, earlier influences, you'd say things like, Kraftwerk and Jean-Michel Jarre and that kind of thing. The usuals, right? But I got hooked into the rave scene and stuff like that. Things like the Prodigy, obviously lots of other artists around that kind of era. So in terms of musical influences, that's kind of that rave thing, and dance music was mostly where I kind of pitched myself, I guess. Okay. But that's the thing I kind of like about the demo scene, is that you know, when you're writing music for a demo, you can't just go, well, I've got this banging rave tune, because it might be like a really relaxing demo, right? So
Yeah.
that thing of like pushing you out of your comfort zone and making you, you know, delve into something else, find something else, some kind of atmosphere or texture that would work with something like that. That's
pushing the boundaries.
Yeah.
And you have always moved between the discipline of creating music and programming. What weight do these two facets have as a creator?
It's I guess it was slightly born. I mean, it's born out of just back in the day, I guess. I wasn't the coder, so and so none of that part of it was really up to me, right? I would write the music and just hope that it gets used, right?
Okay.
So the thing that really drove me into really learning kind of like demo coding as such was I think before I left the scene into the late 90s, I'd kind of put together like some Pro Tracker modules that I wanted as a continuous music disc.
Okay.
Like the Flash production ones and stuff like that. Back in 2010, when I got back into the scene, I discovered that all of my Pro Tracker modules, even the unfinished ones, were neatly stored in online repositories.
Okay.
So I kind of downloaded them and then saw this collection of, like, I think it's like 4 tunes that I'd done, and thought, well, why don't I just, you know, I know I'm pretty good at programming, why don't I just actually bite the bullet and work out how to do it myself?
Okay.
So yeah, and obviously with a lot of forum posts and a lot of help from other people, like I think it's about 6 months or a year later, I managed to finish that music disc that I wanted to do back in 1997.
I see. So this one is related. What is unstable label?
Oh, so yeah, back during the mid 2000s, I released one of my first records. Well, not one of my first record, but one of my earlier records. One of my first breakbeat records on a label called Unstable Label. And my friend Paul was running the label, and I kind of joined up and was kind of liaising with the artists, making sure the tunes were, you know, well produced and like mastered and stuff. So it's just I was just kind of helping out, and Paul eventually just it just kind of you know, these things they'll survive unless you really put the effort in. They're going to survive for a certain amount of time. So I kind of borrowed the label for a bit afterwards to do a few bits. So I was working with artists, and we turned ourselves into just like a net label. So we were just releasing tunes for free. But still, you know, making sure there was artwork and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, really, it was born from my friend Paul, who started a physical record label, and then I pulled it into the demo scene for a bit.
So let's talk about trackers, because working with trackers is always a challenge because of the technical limitations. But in recent years, there are new challenges like working with Amiga Clang or for Clang, where you also have to create and synthesize your own sounds and instruments. Which is your working method? I mean, do you first experiment with sound and then use as a source of inspiration, or do you have defined music in your mind and generate the sounds you imagine?
So it depends. I mean, this is very, it does really depend on what your end goal is. So if I was doing, say, for example, a Pro Tracker tune that was for a music competition, say a revision, that would start in Ableton, so a modern DAW. And I would just, you know, in that environment, it's very quick to throw things together, right? The workflow is really quick. I grab samples from my massive library, throw them in. That doesn't work. That doesn't. So when you're working on that like large form stuff, that would always remain in Ableton. And then you'll get to a point and go, right, I think I'm going to start putting that into Pro Tracker. You obviously don't throw away the Ableton project, but you'll bounce down all the samples that you need, and then you'll start reconstructing that in Pro Tracker. And the beauty of that method is that, say you'll get like 2 minutes of your tune done and go, well, actually, I need some more bits and pieces. Like I need some more elements. I need something else. I want to go and change something. you can just drop back into Ableton, throw a few more bits in and get some new elements and then get them down into Pro Tracker. So in terms of that big, large form stuff, that's kind of the workflow.
Yeah.
When you're talking about things like music for 64Ks, for example, then Ableton can also still be a good sketching point, but it doesn't really, because you're not using that to author samples that much, it isn't as great of a help. So that turns into a more kind of organic approach where you will spend most of your time in the tracker and the soft synth that you're using to generate sounds.
Okay.
So yeah, they're similarly like if you consider something like a chiptune, right?
Yeah.
That's the same thing. Like there's not much point in doing anything in Ableton. You might as well just do it all in Pro Tracker anyway.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it depends. And then, you know, if someone gives you a new sound chip or a sound chip you haven't worked with before and some weird tracker that's the only tracker that's available for that system, then you don't really have a choice. You just got to grin and bear it.
Imagine during the 90s having Ableton to generate sound. That's you know, magic.
I'm really pleased that I grew up in a time where you had to be quite militant in your search for sample content, right? You know,
that's it. Like, I killed a couple of guys to get the ST discs, you know.
Yeah.
I was thirsty of samples. Yeah. Yeah,
you end up with this kind of acute hearing where you'll be listening to a piece of music and you go, hang on, that beat's on it. So
yeah.
I'm having that. Let's get the CD.
Always in sampling mode, you know.
Yeah. Exactly,
I have to grab this. I have to grab that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, not having that, you know, it's still a valid workflow. I've seen Gwen do it on his stream where he basically just plugs in his Amiga and just samples CDs straight into Pro Tracker and just composes. And I love to watch it, but for me now that the genie's out the bottle with the technology, right? So, you know, I just like to. That's my comfy space now. So
yes, pure pleasure. Of course.
Yeah.
And one thing that defines your music, besides power and flow, is quality. How do you manage to sound so balanced and defined out of the box? Because in trackers, the mix is raw, no mixer, no EQ, nothing. So how do you do it?
It's just belligerence mostly. So in terms of sample quality, that comes down to the conversion process that I use. It's not super magic, but it's basically I'll export something from Ableton. It'll be a 44 kilohertz 16-bit stereo WAV file.
Okay.
I'll load that up into something that people don't use anymore, which is SoundForge. But again, you know,
classic.
It
works. It works.
You know,
yeah, absolutely.
It works. But yeah, in there I will do a lot of processing. So obviously you need to make sure it's mono. So a quick tip, if you're looking for it, do not mix the channels if you're bouncing down to mono. Most of the time you'll get phase cancellation. All right, so that's
good point. Good point.
So yeah, I make it mono and I keep it 16-bit 44 kilohertz, and then I make it as loud as possible using compressors and limiters before it goes anywhere else. So at that high quality with that bit rate and sample rate, make it as loud as possible. And then the last point in that chain is to then convert it to 8-bit and resample it. And that means that you've still got your source there. So if you've made it too loud, you can go back and quieten it down.
Yeah.
Or you need it a bit louder, you just try and push it a bit further. So it's a case of like, and then those go into Pro Tracker, you start composing with it, and then you go, well, actually, that's a bit too loud. I could either control that with some volume commands or change the volume on it, or go, well, actually, it'd be much easier if I just grab the sample and just make it a little bit quieter or a little bit louder. So
I see.
Yeah, so in terms of the balancing, it's just a process that happens during the composition. Like you'll be just listening to it over and over again. Actually, well, that's too loud. That's too loud. You know, and yeah, it's just tweaking as you go, really.
That's brilliant. And how about the Spectrum? Because you released the Checonoid music on the Spectrum, and how did you get it sound so amazing?
So that was it was NE7 that pointed me to this piece of software called One Tracker. I don't know if you've seen that. It's a single tracker which is filled with a multitude of ZX Spectrum beeper engines.
Okay.
So I wanted to do that music disc so it would work on a 48K Spectrum without the AY chip.
Wow.
So he gave me this tracker, and I just spent the evening listening to the demos of each of the tunes and going, well, actually, this engine's got a kind of texture to it that I quite like.
Okay.
There's something about it, like I know there's enough there to do some like drums and some bass and a bit of melody, and that one I like. So I just literally just fire it up and then have a jam with it. That's kind of I love that kind of discovery, particularly with like old sound chips or beeper engines, things like that, because it then becomes that classic, the limitation breeds creativity, right?
Absolutely.
So they're going, right, how can I make this 1-bit audio slap? How can we get this to bang? So it just turns into like it's an experiment. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So
in this case, it works.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember first time I heard one assembler, I guess, music from the beeper, not the AY chip.
Yeah.
It was the music from Cobra.
Yeah.
That was
falling, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. PCM-like sound. Yeah, it was absolutely. My mind exploded. What? This little machine is incredible. So yeah, it blew my mind. And you create music, sounds and code, but have you been also involved in graphics in any production?
No, that's my Achilles heel, that one.
Okay.
So I've actually got a red and green color deficiency in my eye. So I cannot be trusted with colors. The furthest I go is I will fire up. I've got obviously paint programs and bits and pieces that I need for if I need to trim stuff or cut stuff or edit stuff or change the number of colors or editing stuff. But yeah, it's one of the few disciplines I'm like, well, if I can't get the colors right, then I'm not sure I should be drawing anything. So
yeah. But at the end of the day, all colors are fake, so don't worry about it. So one personal question, if I may. You release productions, compose, code, and stream DJ sessions. How the hell did you get time for all this? Because it's very time-consuming.
It's a little hack that I call the most amazing wife in the world.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's
share your secret, please, because my life is just in minutes, just segments of minutes. So.
So just it's my wife Sarah. She's when I got back into we got married the year before I got back into the demo scene. So I explained to her, I'm going to a demo party. This is what this thing is, and it's quite geeky. And then the next day, I discovered she's an avid learner. So the first thing she did is get straight onto YouTube and then learn, and said, oh, well, so it's to do with like it was born from the cracking scene and the piracy scene where they had intros. I was like, yeah, that's exactly right.
Wow, okay. What a prize!
And she comes to revision every year.
Nice.
She comes to Nova in the UK as well. So she comes to demo parties. So when like the calendar's rolling over and it's getting closer to production time and stuff.
Okay.
I will almost be ejected from the living room. So haven't you got something to do? Like the clock's ticking. Get up there and get creative.
Cool, fantastic. My wife, I always say, you met me as a freak, so it's nothing new,
Yeah.
And what's your personal favorite production?
Oh God. There's too many of them. I think if we're talking about fairly modern, I like a lot of the older demos and stuff, but my favorites are really Amiga demos, particularly Amiga demos, 500 demos in recent years, where the aesthetic has been not retro. So if they've got a look or a feel or something about them that's like new and fresh.
Okay.
One of my favorites is it's quite old now actually. I think it's about 10 years old. Is by Altair and it's called Xenodrive. And it uses this like looping frame buffer with 3D wireframe rendering in it, and it's just really good. Like the soundtrack slaps, and the synchronization on it's great. I think it's by KK of Altair, and that's if we're talking about demos that I will just watch again and again, that's one of them for sure. So
okay, nice. And in your opinion, which demo has impressed you the most in your life, no matter the platform?
Yeah. So if we're talking no matter the platform,
you can talk about your own ones, okay? No worries.
Can't do that.
Yeah, you can.
I'm impressed that I managed to finish anything, but yeah.
That's another point. Yeah.
I think if we're talking about PC or just any other platform, my favorite demo of all time is Square by Still. I don't know if you've seen that. It's again fantastic soundtrack. But I was reading the README on it, and the whole thing is like there's no triangles in this demo. And I was like, what? Wow. How is that? And like it looks 3D. How are there no triangles? But yeah, that one still to this day, we'll watch that till the cows come home. Absolutely love it.
It's a piece of art. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And on Amiga?
Again, I think it's probably Xenodrive, and impressed me the most. I think if we're gonna go slightly left of field. I think the thing that kind of really impressed me back in the day was the
classics. Yes.
Yeah, it's the and slightly left of field is the Flash Productions Digital Concert 2. Because it blew my mind that you put a floppy disk in the Amiga and it played a continuous tune for, I think it was like 20 minutes or something.
Yeah.
I was like, how is it doing that?
It's magic. It's magic.
Yeah, absolute magic, yeah.
And what do you think about the evolution of the scene in the last years? Where is it going?
I think it feels it's slightly plateaued, I think a little bit. And I don't mean that in a negative way.
Okay.
I think that there's less focus on things being technically impressive. I mean, I think the perfect demo you get is where you have that mixture of technically impressive, but also aesthetically interesting and fresh. So it's like, all right, I can do like this fantastic thing with all these cubes or whatever. But like, if you can wrap that into a piece of art, into something that's, got
design,
a bit more meaning around it. Yeah, like a theme, the aesthetic, wrapping everything together, having the soundtrack that matches that aesthetic. That's like that for me. Those are the demos that I really like. So that's and you've seen a lot more of that. I mean, in the last like 5 or 10 years, even on like older platforms, which is what I really like, because there is a tendency on like older platforms like Spectrum and C64 and Amiga to just I'm going to do a demo, I'm going to do all the same effects that everyone else has ever done.
Yeah.
But then to be able to present, even if you're presenting some of those old effects, but to present them in a way that's like cohesive with everything else that's going on, it's just it's more of that, please.
Okay, and you can add AI to the mix and everything explodes. Yeah.
But I think also, at least for me, when I got back into it in 2010, the social aspect of it all was really big for me. So I started going to demo parties, went to the first revision, I missed, what was it called before that? Breakpoint? Missed Breakpoint. So I never went to any of those. But yeah, so I went to revision, and then you just meet people, and then they become your friends, and then you don't see them for years on end, and then suddenly you're at revision, and then like, oh, I haven't seen you for years. Where have you been? You know?
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
The experience. So, returning to music, nowadays new generations of musicians are discovering trackers, and they are coming from DAW environments with virtually no limitations on channels, instruments, and workflows. What would you recommend to a person who wants to get started in the world of trackers?
Lower your expectations. Is the honest truth, right? I mean,
tame your ego first.
Well, no, it's like okay, I've got my sample. I'll put it in the tracker. Oh, it doesn't sound anywhere near as good as it used to. It's like, yeah that's gonna happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Fight with it.
Yeah. Don't fight with it. Just like, okay, that's in. Maybe I'll try and get it to sound better later. But you know, most people just have fun, really. You know, you will find that, you know, these restrictions, like the restriction of like 4 channels in Pro Tracker, for example. A friend of mine said this to me. It's like, because you've only got 4 channels, you really have to make sure that the core of what you're doing is solid.
That's
right.
It.
So that's, you know, you can add, you know, everything else around it is like, you know, it's window dressing, right? So if the core of it is good and solid within that limitation, then, you know, that's the way to go. So
now, heavy question. In your opinion, who's the best computer musician ever? Demoscene or game?
I will take, it doesn't like being called this anymore, but I'm going to call him by his old scene name. One of the most influential Amiga musicians and C musicians of back in the day was Heatbeat, without a shadow of a doubt. I loved what he could produce, and he was one of those, even back then in the 90s, he was super fresh, super innovative. You'd never know what he'd come up with. You know, when he had a few pops at rave, like he did it in a way that, you know, no one else would have even thought of doing. So yeah, he's like one of my biggest influences in terms of Amiga musicians, like easily one of my biggest influences. I think he's amazing. And he's called Alexei Eben now, I think. Yeah.
Okay. So can you tell us something about your future projects, both in software and music?
Future-wise, it's a strange one. There's always going to be more Amiga stuff.
Okay.
Right, because, you know, it's so ingrained in me. And, you know, I've got this weird love-hate relationship with Pro Tracker, particularly because I've come at it now from a programmer's point of view, and seen what an absolute trash fire under the bonnet it is. You know, as a user, it's great. You can do stuff, you can do lots of tricks, but underneath it, it's just awful. But yeah, in terms of what interests me, I get very distracted by things. So a prime example is I started disassembling Shinobi from the arcade at the tail end of last year.
Wow.
And then ported it to the Neo Geo because I disassembled the code.
Easy peasy.
Wow. It's like where these projects come from, I don't know. Like I call them things that get out of hand. Right?
Okay.
So it's like, you know, oh, that looks interesting. I wonder what that does. Oh, okay. Oh, hang on. I've got a game here now. Well, how's that happened?
Yeah. I understand you. I'm the man with 1,000 hobbies, so I don't have enough time for all of them. And finally, I have a more philosophical question for you. What is the best reason why a person with a talent for programming or music should enter the world of Demoscene today?
Because it's fun.
Period.
Like making a tune that you're happy with. I mean, you know, at the end of the day, it has to be fun, right? You know, you have to enjoy what you're doing. So if that's music or coding or graphics, if you're enjoying it, then yeah, just get involved. Just because there is no greater feeling than being at a demo party and having your entry being displayed on the big screen.
Wow.
There's literally no greater feeling. The levels of anxiety that it can induce is quite stressful at times.
Yeah.
Like, in a
Damn deadlines.
Like,
Yeah.
you know, you'd be like shaking for 30 minutes afterwards going, I think that worked. I think that was good.
And no sleep and all that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, just if you go to a demo party, go find one near you. Go and try it out, because you will soon find that you will see lots of great, amazing art, music, graphics, and demos, and you will meet lots of like-minded, nerdy individuals that will be your friends for life.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, Hoffman, thank you so much for spending your time with us and sharing your experiences. And you will always have a place here to have a chat. So, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
You're welcome. It's been lovely.
Thank you so much.